To keep seeing more stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you like this video, share your feedback in the comments section. The humiliation and the defense. The breaking point. Nina Hartley wiped down table 7 for the third time, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. At 24 years old, she had learned to hide her fatigue behind a practiced smile, the kind that made wealthy patrons feel comfortable enough to leave generous tips. The Sterling Crown was not the kind of establishment where girls from her neighborhood usually worked, but desperation had a way of opening doors that pride would have kept firmly shut. Her daughter Lily needed new winter boots. The ones from last year were 2 sizes too small, and Nina had watched her brave little girl squeeze her feet into them without complaint that morning. That image had fueled every smile, every polite greeting, every degrading moment she had endured during her 3 weeks working at this temple of excess and privilege. The restaurant glittered like something from a dream she could never afford to have. Imported chandeliers cast warm golden light across white marble floors. Each table was set with silverware that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The patrons wore clothes that whispered of old money and new power, their conversations a symphony of deals, scandals, and casual cruelty. Nina had mastered the art of invisibility. She moved through the dining room like a shadow, present but not intrusive, helpful but not presumptuous. Most customers never really looked at her face. She was just the help, a pair of hands to refill water glasses and remove empty plates. Everything changed when Vincent Romano walked through the doors, the arrival. Even without knowing his name, Nina felt the shift in atmosphere. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they changed pitch, became more careful. The restaurant manager, Thomas, a man who treated staff like disposable napkins, practically sprinted across the floor to greet the newcomer. Vincent Romano was not a man who needed to announce his presence. He commanded it naturally, the way gravity commands objects to fall. 6 feet of controlled power, he wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. His dark hair was styled with casual precision, and when he removed his sunglasses, Nina caught a glimpse of eyes the color of strong coffee, intense and watchful. He moved with deliberate grace, each step measured and purposeful. A thin scar traced along his jawline, and Nina noticed the edge of intricate tattoos peeking from beneath his collar and cuffs. 2 men in expensive suits flanked him at a respectful distance, their eyes constantly scanning the room with professional vigilance. Thomas appeared at Nina's elbow, his face flushed with nervous energy. His grip on her arm was tight enough to bruise. "Table 12, he hissed in her ear. "Whatever he wants, whatever he needs, you make it happen. Do you understand me? This man is not someone you disappoint." Nina nodded, smoothing her white uniform and approaching the corner booth where Vincent had seated himself with his back to the wall. The position gave him a clear view of every entrance and exit, she noticed. His bodyguards positioned themselves at nearby tables, creating an invisible perimeter. The first exchange. "Good evening, sir," Nina said, grateful that her voice came out steady and professional. "May I start you with something to drink?" When Vincent looked up at her, Nina felt something shift in her chest. His gaze was not lecherous or dismissive like so many other wealthy men who came through these doors. It was penetrating, curious, as if he could see past her practiced waitress smile to the exhausted mother beneath. For a moment that seemed to stretch impossibly long, neither of them spoke. Nina felt exposed under that intense scrutiny, but not violated. It was as if he was memorizing her face, cataloging every detail with careful attention. "Whiskey," he said finally, his voice deep and textured with the faintest hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. "Neat. The Macallan if you have it." As Nina turned to leave, she heard him add quietly, almost as if speaking to himself, "What's your name?" She glanced back over her shoulder. "Nina," he repeated, as if testing how the word felt in his mouth. Something in his expression softened fractionally. "Be careful tonight, Nina. Not everyone here deserves your kindness." The warning made no sense to her then. She filed it away as she went to fetch his drink, puzzling over the strange gentleness in the voice of a man who made seasoned restaurant managers nervous. The storm arrives 1 hour later. Nina understood exactly what Vincent had meant. Celeste Romano arrived like a hurricane dressed in designer clothes. Blonde hair styled in perfect waves, dripping in jewelry that could feed Nina's neighborhood for a year, she swept through the restaurant with the entitled energy of someone who had never heard the word no. Vincent. Her voice carried across the entire dining room without any attempt at discretion. You started without me. How incredibly rude. Nina was refilling water glasses at a nearby table when she felt Celeste's eyes on her. The assessment was quick and cruel, the kind of dismissive glance that reduced Nina to something less than human. This place is really going downhill, Celeste announced loudly to Vincent, though her eyes remained fixed on Nina. Look at the quality of help they're hiring these days. Probably can't even speak proper English. The words landed like physical blows, but Nina kept her expression neutral. She had heard worse in her life, survived worse. What mattered was getting through the shift, collecting her paycheck, buying Lily those boots. She approached their table with careful professionalism, her order pad ready. The catalyst, I'll have the lobster, Celeste said without looking at Nina, her attention fixed on her phone. And make sure it's not overcooked like last time. Some people here clearly don't understand quality. Of course, ma'am, Nina replied politely. Would you like any sides with that? Celeste waved her hand dismissively, and as she did, her elbow connected with the wine glass on the table. Nina watched in slow motion as the glass toppled, sending deep red wine cascading across the white tablecloth and directly onto her uniform. The expensive wine soaked through the fabric instantly, spreading like blood across snow. Nina stood frozen, feeling the cold liquid seep through to her skin, staining the only uniform she owned. Without this uniform, she couldn't work. Without work, she couldn't pay rent. Without rent, she and Lily would be on the street. The entire restaurant went silent. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Every patron turned to stare at the spectacle of the humiliated waitress standing in her ruined clothes. Oops, Celeste said, and Nina would remember that smile for the rest of her life. It was the smile of someone who had just crushed an insect and felt nothing. How clumsy of me. Nina's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her hands shook as wine dripped from her fingertips onto the pristine marble floor. She opened her mouth to apologize, to somehow make this situation better, but no words came out. That was when she heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Vincent Romano stood slowly, unfolding from his seat with controlled fury radiating from every line of his body. His dark eyes were fixed on Celeste with an intensity that made the temperature in the room seem to drop 10 degrees. Everyone out, he said quietly, but his voice carried absolute authority. Now. The defense the restaurant cleared in less than 3 minutes. Wealthy patrons abandoned $100 meals mid-bite. Wait staff vanished into the kitchen. Even Thomas, the manager, fled without a backward glance. Only Nina remained, standing in her wine-soaked uniform, watching as the most powerful man in the room slowly approached his cousin. Celeste, Vincent said, his voice deadly quiet. Apologize. For what? Celeste laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it now. It was an accident, Vincent. Don't be so dramatic. Apologize, he repeated, and Nina saw fear flicker across Celeste's perfectly made-up face. Now. The spoiled socialite's facade cracked, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Her eyes darted between Vincent and Nina, calculating, realizing that she had miscalculated badly. I'm sorry, Celeste stammered, looking directly at Nina for the first time. It truly was an accident. But Vincent wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone and made a call that lasted exactly 10 seconds. Bring the car around. Take Celeste home. She won't be returning to any of our establishments indefinitely. Vincent, you can't be serious, Celeste protested, her voice rising in panic. Try me, he said flatly, and Celeste's mouth snapped shut. 2 men in dark suits materialized as if from nowhere, flanking Celeste with professional courtesy that offered no room for argument. As they escorted her out, she shot Nina a look of pure hatred, but Nina barely noticed, her entire focus was on Vincent as he turned to her, and she saw his expression transform completely. The cold authority melted away, replaced by genuine concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," Nina managed, though her voice shook. "I should go. I need to figure out how to replace this uniform before my next shift." "No," Vincent said firmly. "You don't go anywhere looking like that. Come with me." Before Nina could protest, he was guiding her toward a door marked private, one she had never noticed before. It led to an elevator with buttons she couldn't read, ascending to floors that weren't supposed to exist. As they rose in silence, Nina's mind raced. She should be afraid. This man was dangerous, powerful, someone who cleared restaurants with a single command. But standing beside him, feeling the warmth radiating from his body, she felt something unexpected. She felt safe. The protection and the revelation. The sanctuary. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse that took Nina's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city she had never seen before, all glittering lights and endless possibility. The furniture looked like museum pieces, elegant and expensive, everything arranged with careful precision. Nina stood in the entrance, dripping wine onto what was probably priceless Italian marble, feeling completely out of place. "There's a guest room down the hall," Vincent said, his voice gentler than she had heard it before. "You'll find clothes in the closet. My housekeeper keeps various sizes for situations like this. Take whatever you need." Nina stared at him, trying to process this unexpected kindness from a man who had just banished his own cousin without hesitation. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you helping me?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with that same intense attention he had shown at the restaurant. "Because someone should," he said finally. "And because Celeste had no right to treat you that way." "But I'm nobody," Nina said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "I'm just a waitress trying to make rent." Something flashed in Vincent's eyes then. Anger, but not directed at her. "You're not nobody, Nina," he said firmly. "Don't ever let anyone make you believe that." The transformation. The guest room was larger than Nina's entire apartment. The bathroom had marble counters, a rainfall shower, and towels so soft they felt like clouds. The closet was indeed stocked with clothes in various sizes, all bearing designer labels that made her dizzy. She selected the simplest outfit she could find, dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than she made in a month. As she showered away the wine and humiliation, she let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming strangeness of the situation she found herself in. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she found Vincent standing by the windows, his jacket removed and sleeves rolled up. For the first time, she could see the full extent of his tattoos, intricate designs that covered his forearms like works of art telling stories she couldn't read. "Better?" he asked without turning around. "Much better. Thank you," Nina hesitated. "I should call my neighbor. My daughter will be wondering where I am." That made Vincent turn to face her completely. "You have a daughter?" "Lily." "She's 6, Nina said, and her voice automatically softened the way it always did when she talked about her little girl. "She's with Mrs. Chen tonight while I work." "And her father?" The question was asked carefully, but Nina caught the dangerous edge in his tone. "He left when I was 3 months pregnant," she said simply. Decided fatherhood wasn't part of his 5-year plan. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. "His loss," he said quietly. "And his mistake. The threat emerges." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. Nina had never been this high up before, never seen the world from this perspective. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Anything. Why did you really help me tonight? And please don't say it's because someone should. There's more to it than that." Vincent was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless," he said. "To have people treat you like you don't matter. I swore a long time ago that when I had the power to change that for someone else, I would." Before Nina could respond, his phone buzzed. Vincent glanced at the screen and his entire demeanor changed. The gentleness vanished, replaced by cold fury. "We have a problem," he said, already reaching for his jacket. "Someone's been asking questions about you, Nina. Questions about where you live, where your daughter goes to school." The blood drained from Nina's face. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that mean you and Lily aren't safe going home tonight. The race against time." Nina's legs gave out and she sank onto the leather sofa. "I don't understand. Why would anyone care about me?" Vincent's expression was grim as he scrolled through messages. "Celeste has friends. Wealthy, vindictive friends who think humiliating working people is entertainment. When I banned her from our establishments, she got angry. Angry enough to make some calls. You think she sent people after me?" The idea was so foreign, so terrifying that Nina could barely process it. "I know she did," Vincent said, his voice carrying cold fury. "Brittany Ashford. One of Celeste's circle. Her family has connections to some very unpleasant people who do favors for the right price." "Lily," Nina whispered, her hands shaking. "Oh God, Lily." Vincent was already moving, phone pressed to his ear. "Marco, I need you to get to 847 Riverside Drive, apartment 2C. There's a 6-year-old girl there with a babysitter named Mrs. Chen. Bring them both to the Wilshire safe house now." He hung up and knelt in front of Nina, his hands gently covering hers. "Lily will be safe," he said with absolute certainty. "I have the best people in the city, and they're already on their way to her." "This is insane," Nina said, tears streaming down her face. "This morning I was worried about buying winter boots, and now you're telling me my daughter is in danger because your cousin spilled wine on me." "Not because she spilled wine," Vincent said firmly. "Because I protected you. Because I chose you over her, and she can't stand that. The choice." The weight of his words settled between them. He had chosen her, a nobody waitress with $17 in her bank account, over his own family. The implications were staggering. "Why?" Nina asked. "Why would you risk your relationship with your family for someone like me?" Vincent's thumb traced gently across her knuckles. "Because the moment I saw you, something changed. You were kind to everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. You worked harder than anyone else in that room, and you did it with dignity. You're not someone like you, Nina. You're exactly who you are, and that's extraordinary." Before she could respond, his phone rang. "Marco." Nina watched Vincent's face as he listened, saw relief flood his features. "Good. Keep them there until I give the all clear." He hung up and turned to her. "Lily's safe. She's asking for her mom, but she's safe." "I need to see her," Nina said, standing up on shaking legs. "I need to hold her and make sure she's okay." "You will," Vincent promised. "But first, we need to deal with the people who threatened her." There was something in his tone that made Nina's blood run cold. "What do you mean, deal with them?" "I mean they made a mistake targeting you and your daughter, and people who make that kind of mistake don't get to make it twice, the better way." "Vincent, no," Nina grabbed his arm as he started toward the door. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, please don't. I don't want anyone hurt because of me." He turned back to her, and for a moment she saw past the dangerous exterior to the man underneath. Someone who had been hurt, who had learned to protect himself and others through strength and fear. "They threatened a child, Nina. Your child. That's not something I can let slide." "Then don't let it slide," she said, surprising herself with her firmness. "But don't become a monster because of it either. There has to be another way." Vincent stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know," Nina admitted. "But you're not just a thug, are you? You're a businessman. Surely there's a way to handle this that doesn't involve violence." For the first time since she had met him, Vincent smiled. Really smiled. Not the cold, calculating expression from the restaurant, but something warm and genuine. "You're asking me to be better than I am," he said softly. "That I'm asking you to be who I think you already are underneath all of this," Nina replied. "The man who stood up for a waitress he barely knew. The man who's protecting my daughter right now. That's not a monster, Vincent. That's a hero." His phone buzzed again, but this time when he answered, his voice was different. Controlled, businesslike, but not murderous. "Brittany," he said, and Nina realized he was talking to the woman who had threatened them. "We need to talk. Your place. 1 hour. And Brittany, call off your people or you'll discover exactly why people fear the Romano name." He hung up and looked at Nina with something like wonder in his eyes. "I'm going to end this tonight," he said. "But I'm going to do it your way. No blood, no bodies, just consequences that will ensure you and Lily are never bothered again. The transformation and new beginning. The reckoning." The next 3 hours were the longest of Nina's life. She paced Vincent's penthouse like a caged animal, checking her phone every few minutes for updates. He had left 2 of his men with her, silent professional guards who treated her with respectful courtesy but made it clear she wasn't leaving until Vincent returned. At midnight, her phone finally rang. "It's done," Vincent's voice was tired but satisfied. "Brittany won't be bothering anyone ever again. Her family's real estate contracts have been mysteriously cancelled. Her social media accounts have been flooded with evidence of her tax fraud, and 3 major charities have publicly dropped her as a patron. She'll be lucky if she can get a table at a diner after tonight." Nina sank onto the sofa, relief flooding through her. "And your cousin?" "Celeste is currently writing you a very long, very sincere apology letter," Vincent said. "She'll also be delivering a check for $10,000 tomorrow. Compensation for your uniform, lost wages, and the trauma she caused. Plus, she'll be volunteering at a women's shelter for the next year. If she refuses, she'll find her trust fund frozen and her credit cards cancelled." "It's really over?" Nina whispered. "It's over," Vincent confirmed. "You and Lily are safe. I'm on my way back to you now." The return. 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and Vincent stepped out, looking exhausted but victorious. Nina ran to him without thinking, throwing her arms around his neck. He caught her easily, holding her tight against his chest. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you for protecting us." "You don't need to thank me," he murmured into her hair. "You and Lily are under my protection now. That's not going to change." She pulled back to look at him. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not letting you go back to that apartment," Vincent said firmly. "It means Lily gets the best schools, the best healthcare, the best of everything. It means you never have to worry about money or safety or anything else ever again." "Vincent, I can't just accept that from you." "You can," he said. "And you will, because I'm falling in love with you, Nina, and I protect what I love." The confession. The words hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Nina's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared into his dark eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and hope. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he replied. "I know you're brave enough to stand up to me when you think I'm wrong. I know you'd sacrifice anything for your daughter. I know you see good in people even when they don't deserve it. I know that in one night you've changed everything I thought I knew about myself." Nina felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared, Vincent. Your world is so different from mine. I don't belong here." "You belong wherever you choose to be," he said gently, cupping her face in his hands. "And I'm hoping you'll choose to be with me." What about Lily? What kind of life would this be for her? Vincent's expression softened. A safe one. A happy one. I would never hurt a child, Nina. I would protect her the same way I protect you. She would want for nothing. She needs stability, not luxury, Nina said firmly. She needs a normal childhood. Then that's what she'll have, Vincent promised. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. I'll be whatever you need me to be. The meeting. The next morning, Nina stood outside the Wilshire safe house, her hands trembling as she prepared to see her daughter. Vincent stood beside her, giving her the strength she needed. When the door opened and Lily came running out, Nina dropped to her knees and caught her little girl in her arms. "Mommy!" Lily cried, squeezing her tight. "Mrs. Chen said we had to come here because it was important. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect now," Nina said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I'm so sorry you had to leave home suddenly." Lily pulled back and looked up at Vincent with curious eyes. "Are you Mommy's friend?" Vincent knelt down to Lily's eye level, his expression gentle. "I hope to be. My name is Vincent." "It's very nice to meet you, Lily." "You're very tall," Lily observed seriously. "And you have drawings on your arms. Did they hurt?" Vincent smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "A little bit. But I think they're worth it." "They're pretty," Lily decided. Then she turned back to Nina. "Mommy, can we go home now? I miss my stuffed rabbit." Nina exchanged a glance with Vincent, who nodded encouragingly. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about something important," Nina said gently. "How would you feel about living somewhere new? Somewhere safe and nice?" Lily considered this seriously. "Would my rabbit come too?" "Of course," Nina said, fighting back tears. "Your rabbit goes everywhere you go." "Then okay," Lily said simply, with the adaptability of childhood. "As long as I'm with you, Mommy." The new beginning. 3 months later, Nina stood in the kitchen of Vincent's penthouse, which had somehow become their home. Lily was in her new bedroom, decorated exactly how she had wanted it, playing with toys she had never dreamed of owning. Vincent came up behind Nina, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how different everything is," Nina said, leaning back against his chest. "About how scared I was that night in the restaurant, and how I never could have imagined this is where I would end up." "Regrets?" Vincent asked, and she heard the vulnerability in his voice. Nina turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had defended her, protected her, loved her. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "You saved us, Vincent. Not just from Celeste and Brittany, but from a life of struggling and fear. You gave us a future." "You gave me something too," Vincent said, pressing his forehead against hers. "You gave me a reason to be better. You and Lily, you're my family now. You're everything that matters." "I love you," Nina whispered, and felt his arms tighten around her. "I love you too," he replied. "Both of you. Always." From the bedroom, they heard Lily laugh, a sound of pure joy and security. The sound of a child who felt safe and loved. Nina smiled, thinking about how a single moment of humiliation had led to the greatest gift of her life. Sometimes the worst moments opened doors to the best futures. Sometimes the most dangerous people had the kindest hearts. And sometimes, love found you in the most unexpected places. The party may have stopped that night in the restaurant, but their real story was just beginning.